Oh, well, I thought I'd vent my spleen yet again. It's been a while since I've actually done that. I guess the occasion this time is the annual budget, federal budget. Not going to have much joy out of this. This could end up being an election budget because we could well be going to the polls in the next 12 months. It just depends what happens with the Liberal Party and the great leader Malcolm Turnbull, who is anything but a leader and has opened the door to the possibility of having Bill Shorten as our Prime Minister. I believe that door would be quite securely shut if we had had a decent leader of the ruling party at this stage, but because he is so inept and out of touch with Australians, I don't think there's much chance that he's going to be a shoo-in to win the election. I think it's the opposite. I think that Bill Shorten is definitely the favourite at this stage. Bill Shorten is quite a good campaigner for all his failings, and there are many of them in the policy area, but when it comes to razzmatazz and energy of campaigning, he's very good. And this is where Malcolm Turnbull falls down totally. He's just like a dead fish when it comes to campaigning. You'll get a bit of excitement out of Malcolm for a short period of time, maybe for 24 hours, and then he'll go back into his shell. He's done it continually since he's stabbed his way into power against Tony Abbott. But more specifically to do with the particular budget, it's not going to exactly set the world on fire. There's going to be some small tax cuts apparently. But it's going to be pretty well steady as she goes type budget. Liberals are just not prepared to make hard decisions. That's where their greatest failing is, in my opinion, and that is a sign of a lack of leadership. The main area, I think, where they really need to pull their finger out, and they've done nothing in this area, is actually cut back on the public service. There's so much public service waste that it's not funny. Heads of departments in the public service don't seem to be held to the same standards as people in private industry. If they stuff up right royally, they just retain their job. Look at the head of the ABS, the Australian Bureau of Statistics. To my knowledge, absolutely nothing happened to that man after that monumental stuff up with the census. In private industry, you'd be held accountable. Look what's happening with AMP, for instance. They say it's going to be a bloodbath in their annual general meeting because of the improprieties with that particular company. And so it should. But when it comes to the public service, you're talking about people who are on salaries of around $800,000. It's not exactly a bad living with the superannuation to go with it. And they are basically able to do whatever they like. Whatever mistake they make, doesn't matter. They hold those jobs for life. I'll give you an example of how soft this government is with the Australian Public Service. There's 300 members of the Administrative Appeals Tribunal who are heading off to a luxurious 3-day junket in an undisclosed luxury resort in Queensland that's going to have the Australian taxpayers half $1 billion out of pocket. $500 million wasted on an indulgence for these bureaucrats and their hangers-on. I mean, it's just outrageous, but of course, this government does nothing. They don't care. They don't seem to care about razor gangs, and actually making the public service more efficient and cutting it back. I mean, they're as bad as the Palaszczuk government here in Queensland, who just basically keeps feathering the nest of the public service, and that's going to be the expense of a productive private industry and private enterprise section of the economy. You've got, say, the NBN, another government organisation, probably semi-autonomous. I don't know what its actual legal status is, but I know one thing for sure, that the heads of the NBN, the underperforming NBN, are the highest paid public servants in Australia. Again, we know that the NBN's a disaster finally people have woken up to the fact that it's a total turkey. My own experience is that I've got an inferior connection now. The only good thing about it is it's a stable connection, but it's slow. I cannot afford to have more than 12 megabytes download with a measly 1 megabyte upload, which means for me to actually upload these videos can take something like 4 or 5 hours for a 10-minute or more video. It's just ridiculous. Whereas in Vietnam, where I was recently, I can upload the same video in about 20 to 30 minutes max, probably shorter. It's a disgrace. And I just can't afford to get a bigger plan than that because it's not cheap. So, that's the biggest load of BS out. And as I'll just reiterate, the three bosses of the NBN are the highest paid public servants in Australia. And we all know that they're not going to get the money back from the NBN when they want to sell it, the government. It's a total turkey. It's going to be bargain basement, and it might end up being the hands of Telstra again at a fire sale price. It's just been an absolute disaster. The government should not have got involved in this area of the economy. The slothiest Prime Minister, he has no energy or willpower to make a difference. He just doesn't seem to care. I think he just wants the Prime Ministership to be a trophy in his cabinet, in his exclusive suburb in Sydney. I think that's basically it. He's just it's a good dinner party conversation piece for him, I think. So that's disgraceful too. And the other thing that is not going to be addressed in the budget, of course, is energy policy. They claim, the Liberals, that they're going to get cheaper electricity by providing more gas. But what they really need to do is create a level playing field for the likes of coal-fired power stations to be able to compete with the renewables. But at the moment, the renewables are being subsidised to the hilt up until 2030, and the Liberals are not prepared to eliminate those subsidies right now so that power utilities can start building coal-fired power plants that are going to reduce the cost of electricity substantially back to where it used to be. You've got to also come up with a cheaper form of power generation, and you need baseload power. And if we're not going to go nuclear for some unknown reason, not embracing nuclear power at all, even with the more modern reactors, it's crazy. So if they don't remove the subsidies straight away, businesses just aren't going to invest in these non-renewable, cheaper forms of energy generation. It's just not going to happen. Malcolm Turnbull forces his cabinet, who I don't think actually agree with his policies, but they've been cowed by him. He called Abbott a disloyal C. That's the exact phrase he used on a plane trip. This is the sort of person we're talking about with Malcolm Turnbull. He came from a rough upbringing, and I think he's still got those rough edges around him, and he's basically a thug. Is the way he treats his cabinet anyway. It's just thuggery, because these people can't really say what they want to say. That's cabinet solidarity, I guess. But it's pathetic because people like Friedberg and Matthias Cormann have different views to what they say publicly, but they're not allowed to voice those because they are on short leashes. So we're not going to get much out of this budget, and it could be the last one for the Liberal Party, and then we're going to be in a hell of a ride with Bill Shorten's Labor administration, which will just add even more debt to the equation. So I feel sorry for the younger generation because they're the ones paying for this debt. I'm a baby boomer. I've got off easily. I've been listening to an audio book about how we're supposedly a group of sociopaths. I think that's a bit over the top, but the author does make some good points about how we've had it really quite good, and I'd have to agree with that. And I've actually even commented to people in my age group about that, how we have had it very good. And it's the youth of the country who are really going to have to be paying these bills. And if they wake up to themselves and and start forcing the politicians to do something about it, that burden may be reduced. We can only hope so. It's happening in New Zealand. They're doing the right thing. They're still reducing their deficit in spite of having a Labor government in power. So that's quite interesting. But here the debt just keeps growing. Not good. So it's going to be a damp squib, the budget that comes out tonight, I'm sorry to say. Please consider subscribing to my channel if you think there's anything there of use to you or entertainment or whatever. And either do that or give me a thumbs up, or if you're feeling really energetic, do both. That'd be great. But please don't ignore me. That's the worst thing you can do on YouTube, is be ignored.